Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Unluckiest high-speed rail, Mother Nature bends human will and infrastructure. Xi in Vietnam to mend a love-hate relationship. China's currency is flexing its muscles. We did not come to sign our death warrant, COP28 draft text derided. China's Xi heads to Vietnam after Hanoi boosts U.S. ties. Unluckiest high-speed rail, Mother Nature bends human will and infrastructure. South China Morning Post. The construction of a high-speed rail line in China's west has been plagued by setbacks and concerns over safety. The Longxin Express, which connects the cities of Lanzhou and Urumqi over a distance of 1,736 kilometers, has ground to a halt 6 times since its completion in 2016. Most of the problems have stemmed from difficulties with tunnel construction in the Chilean mountains, an area of unstable geology. Engineers have warned that tunnels may not be the solution for crossing such terrain, as they are vulnerable to earthquake damage that is costly and difficult to repair. Xi in Vietnam to mend a love-hate relationship. BBC. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is visiting Vietnam, where he is expected to receive a warm welcome from his counterpart, Nguyen Phu Trong. Vietnam is likely to announce its intention to join Xi's Community of Common Destiny, a symbolic move that challenges the US-led global order. This would give China an advantage over the US in the competition for Vietnam's allegiance, following President Joe Biden's recent visit to the country, during which the US was elevated to comprehensive strategic partner status. China will also offer advanced railway technology to help Vietnam upgrade its transport infrastructure, including a rail link that passes through a region with valuable rare earth deposits. However, the two countries will not publicly discuss their territorial dispute in the South China Sea or their contentious history. Online sentiment in Vietnam is often anti-Chinese, with many citizens expressing a desire for peace but also criticizing China's expansive claim to the South China Sea. Vietnamese leaders have to carefully manage the country's nationalist sentiment, which is rooted in its independence from France and the US and its fear of China. China is Vietnam's largest trading partner and biggest foreign direct investor, and the two countries share an ideological bond, but there are significant strategic differences between them. China's currency is flexing its muscles. The Sydney Morning Herald opinion. The yuan's share as a global payments currency has nearly doubled this year, reaching 3.6% in October from 1.9% in January, according to Bloomberg. While the figure is still modest in comparison to the US dollar's 47% share, the increase could signal a challenge to the greenback's dominance in international commerce. A number of factors have contributed to the growth of the yuan, including China's bilateral currency swap lines, Chinese banks lending overseas in their local currency, and corporate treasuries cash pooling. However, the dollar is expected to continue to enjoy an advantage due to the depth of the U.S. capital market and the greenback's vehicle currency status. We did not come to sign our death warrant, COP28 draft text derided. The Sydney Morning Herald. Hopes of including language addressing the phase-out of fossil fuels in the final agreement at the COP28 climate summit have been shattered. Negotiations have resulted in a new draft text that significantly waters down such language, disappointing climate-vulnerable nations. The terms phase-out and phase-down were absent in the new draft, and the reference to reducing consumption and production of fossil fuels was qualified. The oil cartel OPEC and countries including Saudi Arabia and Iraq have been pushing back against including fossil fuels in the agreement. Climate advocates have described the draft as a failure. China's Xi heads to Vietnam after Hanoi boosts U.S. ties. Deutsche Welle. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to visit Vietnam this week to meet with the General Secretary of Vietnam's ruling Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong. The visit comes as China is reportedly unhappy with Vietnam's growing ties to the US and its allies, including Japan. While Vietnam is keen to maintain its independence, it is also China's largest trading partner and relies heavily on economic cooperation with Beijing. Tensions between the two countries over disputed territory in the South China Sea remain unresolved, but experts believe major rifts are unlikely due to the shared political ideology of the two ruling parties. Cambodia's leader holds talks in neighboring Vietnam on first visit since becoming prime minister. Associated Press. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet visited Vietnam on Monday to strengthen ties between the two neighboring countries. Hun Manet met with Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh to discuss cooperation in areas such as education, trade, security, defense, and border affairs. The leaders witnessed the signing of several agreements on trade and science cooperation. Vietnam is Cambodia's third-largest trading partner, with two-way trade totaling $10.57 billion in 2022. Hun Manet is scheduled to meet with other top Vietnamese leaders during his visit. Despite historical complexities, the visit aims to improve relations between the two countries. Misery has company, but recession is a no-show. Bloomberg. The U.S. economy is slowing down, with rising unemployment, but not at the rapid pace many had expected. The latest jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that while there is still no recession, the economy is on track for a soft landing. This is consistent with economists' expectations throughout the year, which have consistently overestimated the weakness of the economy. GDP growth is forecast to remain in positive territory, albeit at a lower rate than currently. The lack of recession predictions has led to strong performance in risk assets and a lack of movement in bond yields. However, wage growth is still a concern, with average hourly earnings rising at an annualized rate of 4%, higher than the Federal Reserve's target. Until wage growth slows, it is unlikely that the Fed will cut interest rates. Meanwhile, foreign direct investment, FDI, in China has turned negative for the first time since the country joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. This indicates a retreat from China as an investment destination, driven by concerns over the country's business environment, supply chain vulnerabilities, and deteriorating relations with the U.S. This has led to a rise in nearshoring or friendshoring, where companies are investing in manufacturing centers closer to home, such as Mexico and Eastern European countries. This shift away from China is likely to have implications for global inflation, as the country has been a major driver of low inflation for the past few decades. Furthermore, it could lead to a less dynamic global economy in the long run. In other news, the author criticizes soccer clubs for exploiting their fans by continuously releasing new and unnecessary away kits. The author argues that these kits are designed to generate more revenue from fans and often have no connection to the club or its history. The author cites examples from Arsenal, Manchester United, and Brighton as particularly egregious cases. U.S. mulls missile notification plans with China, Nikkei says. Bloomberg. The U.S. is considering the proposal to exchange missile launch notifications with China as part of efforts to hold arms control talks in early 2023, according to a senior State Department official. This move is seen as a concrete measure to repair strained ties between the two countries. The U.S. and China previously held rare talks on nuclear arms control, which were described as constructive. The U.S. Embassy in Beijing has not yet commented on the proposal. That's all for today's news updates from the 6 Dimensions. I'm Dr. Six, your trusted observer and purveyor of all things interesting and informative. Let's do a quick recap of today's stories. First, we discussed the challenges faced by the Longxin Express, China's high-speed rail line in the West. Mother Nature seems to have a vendetta against this rail line, with 6 halts since its completion in 2016. Tunnel construction in the unstable geology of the Chilean mountains has been a major hurdle, highlighting the vulnerabilities of tunnels to earthquake damage. Next, we talked about Chinese leader Xi Jinping's visit to Vietnam, where he is expected to receive a warm welcome. Vietnam's intention to join Xi's community of common destiny challenges the US-led global order and gives China an advantage in the battle for Vietnam's allegiance. However, the two countries will avoid discussing their territorial disputes and contentious history. In financial news, we saw the yuan's growing share as a global payments currency, a potential challenge to the US dollar's dominance. While the increase is significant, the dollar's advantage is expected to continue due to the depth of the US capital market and its vehicle currency status. Moving on to climate news, hopes of including strong language on fossil fuel phase-out in the COP28 agreement have been dashed. The new draft text significantly waters down such language, disappointing climate-vulnerable nations. OPEC and countries like Saudi Arabia and Iraq have pushed back against including fossil fuels in the agreement. We also discussed President Xi's visit to Vietnam, which comes as China is reportedly unhappy with Vietnam's growing ties to the US and its allies. Tensions over disputed territory in the South China Sea persist, but major rifts are unlikely due to the shared political ideology of the ruling parties. In regional news, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet visited Vietnam to strengthen ties between the two neighboring countries. The leaders discussed cooperation in various areas and witnessed the signing of agreements on trade and science cooperation. Shifting gears to the U.S. economy, we learned that while the economy is slowing down, it is not heading towards a recession as many had feared. The jobs report showed a soft landing, with GDP growth expected to remain positive, albeit at a lower rate. However, wage growth remains a concern. Lastly, we touched on the U.S. considering the proposal to exchange missile launch notifications with China as part of arms control talks. This move is seen as a step towards repairing strained ties between the two countries. And that's a wrap for today's news. Remember, folks, stay informed, stay curious, and keep those questions coming. What are your thoughts on today's stories? Let's hear it. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.